What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about a 5-issue X-Men miniseries from 2018 called Extermination. This is written by Ed Brisson, or Brisson, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name, with art by Pepe Larraz, Marte Gracia, Ario Anindito, Dexter Vines, and Eric Arseniga. It is almost 100% certain that I mispronounced all those names, and I apologize. So this finally has the original 5 X-Men who were brought forward into the present day from the past at the beginning of Brian Michael Bendis' all-new X-Men back in like 2012. This finally takes them and puts them back in the past. It basically closes the loop on the original 5 X-Men who were stuck in the present day / chose to stay in the present day for a very long time. Like I said, ever since the very beginning of Bendis' all-new X-Men run all the way to this miniseries. So that's like 6 years. And I did not really like this book, which is weird because if you've heard me complain about All New X-Men, I did a 20-minute video complaining about Brian Michael Bendis' X-Men run last year. You should go watch that. I did not like the idea of bringing the original 5 X-Men into the present day. So you would think that I would be okay with a story that finally sends them back to their own time. The problem that I have with this, okay, so the plot is basically that Ahab, he is a character from the Days of Future Past timeline. He wasn't introduced in the Days of Future Past comic. He was actually introduced in a sequel to that comic called Days of Future Present, which was a story that took place in annuals for Fantastic Four, New Mutants, X-Factor, and X-Men in like 1990. That is the story that introduced Ahab. He's basically a cyborg. He looks a lot like what you would expect a cyborg version of Captain Ahab from Moby Dick to look like. He has a peg leg. At one point in this story, he actually talks about how he is searching for his white whale. It's incredibly over the top. Ahab is a human cyborg who hunts down mutants in the Days of Future Past timeline. We find out after his introduction that he was the guy who had the hounds, including Rachel Summers, and he hunted down other mutants with the hounds who were mind-controlled mutants. And so Ahab, who has time travel powers, he is trying to kill one of the original 5 X-Men. And he believes if he can kill any of them, it doesn't matter which one, that he will be able to permanently ruin the timeline. He will basically ruin all of the X-Men's history. None of it will happen if any of the original 5 X-Men are killed before they can be part of that history. And then you've got a younger version of Cable, who is mid to late 20s, early 30s maybe. He comes in, murders the older version of Cable, who has been around since 89 or 90, and then he is trying to kidnap all of the original 5 X-Men to send them back to their own time so that Ahab cannot do what he's trying to do. There are a few things about this that do not make any sense. Number one, why hasn't Ahab tried this before now? They've been in the present-day Marvel Universe for about 6 years. He has not made a move on them this entire time. Ahab was even part of Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers run. He was teaming up with Red Onslaught in that possible future that was kind of looming throughout the course of his run. He's been in the Marvel Universe fairly recently as of this miniseries. Why did he not try this before now? Also, it is incredibly stupid that young Cable murders his older self, and then basically everyone is okay with it at the end. At one point he says it's not murder, he's just being upgraded to a more relevant model. That is one of the dumbest lines that I've ever seen in a comic book. And then at the very end, old Jean Grey basically lets him go off and do his thing, and then I think Domino, who was a lover of Cable and his partner for years, she says, wait, you're just going to let him go? And Jean says, oh, I'm not condoning what he did, but he's got a lot of stuff that he needs to do. And basically, even though she says she's not condoning what he did, she's condoning what he did. She lets him go off. She gives him a kiss on the cheek because he's kind of like her son, sort of. This is really stupid. If this story wanted to replace Cable, and the thing is, I have no idea what is Ed Brisson's idea and what was something handed to him from the management, because Cullen Bunn, who wrote X-Men Blue, he wrote the Uncanny X-Men run before that, he wrote the Magneto run before that, he talked pretty frankly in an interview about how there was a lot of stuff that editorial told him to do and stuff that they told him not to do. He did not want to write a book about the original 5 X-Men, and he kept trying to figure out ways that he could write about other characters that he wanted to write about. And finally, editorial said, you're either going to write about the original original 5 X-Men or you're not going to write an X-Men book at all. He then said, okay, maybe I can turn these guys into the new version of the Exiles, where they're going around the multiverse and they're trying to fix different things that are wrong in different alternate realities. And then they said, no, we're going to send them back to their home time, because in Bendis's run, we see at one point that young teenage Cyclops, he gets wounded at one point, and then adult Cyclops disappears. And then they heal teenage Cyclops, and then adult Cyclops reappears. So this is implying these guys are definitely past versions of the adult X-Men that we have in the present day. And then in Dennis Hopeless's all-new X-Men run, we find out, no, these guys are actually alternate reality versions of the X-Men that we have in the present day. They go back in time one point, and they see other versions of the past X-Men doing something, and they're like, well, that's not us, so I guess we don't have to come back to this time. And I think Dennis Hopeless was just trying to find a way to leave the future of these characters more open-ended, because myself and many other people, I think, were thinking, okay, there's only one way that this can end, them going back to their own time and having their memories erased. Spoilers, that's exactly what happens in this book. So Dennis Hopeless was trying to say, no, we could say that these guys are alternate reality versions of the past X-Men, and they are not destined to do the same things that we've seen them do in past comics. The problem is, it had already been established that they were the past versions of these characters. And then Cullen Bunn, over the course of X-Men Blue, he reveals that those versions of the X-Men, that the all-new, all-different versions here, that they saw, that was actually raised from Battle of the Atom, pretending to be him and his group pretending to be the original X-Men. It's all a big mess. So anyway, basically Cullen Bunn revealed there was all this stuff that he wanted to do that editorial told him, no, you can't do that. There was stuff he did not want to do that they said, yes, you have to do this. So I don't know here, what is Ed Brisson being a bad writer, and what is him being handed bad ideas and told, you have to do a story with this? I have no idea. Cullen Bunn also said that pretty much as soon as X-Men Blue started, everyone at Marvel knew that Jonathan Hickman was going to be doing House of X and Powers of X, and I have no idea if they knew for that long, that's like 2.5 years, if they knew for that long why it took him that long to actually start House of X and Powers of X. I have no idea why he wasn't able to start it if everyone knew that that was going to be happening. But basically, Cullen Bunn said he wasn't really able to do what he wanted because everything was just going to be undone and changed once Jonathan Hickman came on board. And so I don't know how much of this is Ed Brisson saying, I want to do this story where Ahab is trying to kill the original 5 X-Men and Cable comes in and kills his older self and he's trying to send them back in time. I don't know if this is him wanting to do this story or if this is him being handed this story that someone in editorial already came up with and he just has to flesh it out and make it into a comic book with his artistic collaborators. I'm going to guess that someone in editorial came up with this idea and then he just had to turn it into a script. Now, that doesn't make him a good writer. That doesn't excuse him because I have read another story that he wrote. It was a solo Cable story that was also not very good. So I'm still not convinced that he is a good writer, but for something like this that is kind of sort of an event, I don't believe that he came up with this. Now, I could be entirely wrong, but this feels like something that was very editorially driven, and so it's hard for me to figure out who to be mad at here for this garbage fire of a story. So basically, like I said, it makes no sense that Ahab waited until now to try and murder one of the original 5 X-Men. It's incredibly stupid that young Cable comes in and murders his older self, and then everyone is pretty much okay with it by the end. I feel like what would have worked a little better for me there is if young Cable comes in and murders his older self, and then by the end, everyone in the X-Men are like, okay, we are not okay with that guy. So they're all going to try and hunt down this little kid who killed their friend that they've known for years. The X-Force people especially should not be okay with young Cable. And I haven't read anything that has come out after this miniseries. I have no idea what's going on in the aftermath of Jonathan Hickman's House of X and Powers of X. For all I know, young Cable is part of one of those books. Maybe he has his own ongoing. Maybe he's got a new X-Force. I don't know. I feel like it would have made more sense to me if he comes in and says, this older version of myself is not doing what he's supposed to do. Because young Cable comes in and says he's not watching the timeline. He's allowing the original 5 X-Men to be here, and they are causing all these anomalies in the timeline, and then he kills his older self, and then he is seen as a villain by everyone else in the Marvel Universe. I think that would be much more interesting. I would read an ongoing series about young post-teenage Cable on the run from everyone in the Marvel Universe trying to fix time anomalies in the Marvel Universe. I think that would be absolutely fascinating to have this guy. And also, it looks like he deliberately killed Cable, and I think maybe that would have worked better if it was an accident. If he got in a fight with his older self because he's trying to convince his older self, hey, you have to send them back, and then his older self busts out a gun, and then young Cable shoots him, or something like that. I think if it was an accidental murder, this would have worked a lot better. And then you could have him be on the run from the X-Men and X-Force and everybody while he's trying to do good in the present day, and then everyone else is like, that guy killed Cable. We've known Cable for years. He was like a friend to us, a father, whatever. That would have worked better. Now, maybe in his later appearances, because I'm assuming that someone from editorial came in and said, we need to do this different thing with Cable. How can we shake things up with Cable? And then someone came up with the idea of a younger version of Cable coming in. I'm assuming someone came up with that idea. I don't know. But, I mean, someone had to have. But I'm assuming someone who wasn't immediately involved with the making of this book. Anyway, I don't know what's going on with this current Cable status quo in the post-Jonathan Hickman House of X, Powers of X. I have no idea. But I really don't like the way this book kind of treats him like he's okay after doing all the stuff that he did. Also, I think you could have pretty much removed Ahab from this and just have young Cable be your antagonist. Have him going around doing all this really awful stuff, and in his mind, it's okay that I blew up this building because that's not very important in the grand scheme of time, but the original 5 X-Men being here in the present day, that is a huge deal. I have to send them back. I think that would be much more interesting than him basically just being a good guy trying to send these guys back, and the only thing that he did was kill Cable. Because it feels really weird, and I'm going to keep harping on that, it feels really weird that everyone's okay with him at the end after he murdered Cable. If he hadn't done that, maybe if Ahab had murdered Cable. I think there's ways that you could have made this work to replace Cable with a younger version of himself. I'm assuming within the next 5 years we will have old Cable back. Somehow they will bring him back. Now, I could be wrong because they killed Banshee in the Deadly Genesis miniseries forever ago, and it took them a very long time to bring him back. So I don't know. Maybe Cable is one of those characters who, as long as you have a version of him, this post-teenage version of him in the present day, maybe people don't need the old version of him, but I kind of like the older version. I like him better than this guy who committed murder. I don't really like him very much. But another problem that I have with this is the X-Men, the original 5 X-Men, have been told your presence here is screwing up the timeline pretty much since Bendis' run. Beast was told, there was like 600 mutants who showed up at the trial of Beast to tell him that he has screwed up the timeline by bringing the original 5 X-Men into the present day, and Beast yelled at all of them and said, I'm Hank McCoy, I can do whatever I want, and then the original 5 X-Men decide to stay in the present day, and nobody tries to send them back. Actually, that's not true. In the Battle of the Atom miniseries, Reyes and his group of Brotherhood people from the future, they tried to send the original 5 X-Men back to the past, and it was never adequately explained why they wanted to do that, and then they're unable to do it. For some reason, the time machine will not let them go back in time. Why are they able to go back in time now? I don't know. I still don't know why they weren't able to go back in time before. Bendis never explained that. For all I know, it had something to do with the Age of Ultron miniseries, which had like 3 different time travel things going on. Secret Wars had a whole lot of like the universes bending, and we don't need that to happen. So maybe it had something to do with one of those, but it was never actually explained in the Bendis run. So I don't know why they're able to go back in time now. I don't know why Kid Cable can come in and say, read my mind. The future is horrible because you guys stayed here. You need to go back in time. And then all the X-Men are like, oh, okay, let's do it. And multiple times, characters have come back and said, the future is horrible because you guys stay here. And the original 5 X-Men are like, screw you, we're going to stay here and we're going to fix the future. And that was never adequately explained. What is your actual plan? We need a tangible idea. How are you going to fix the future? We don't know, and they don't know. They never did anything. They just kind of hung out here. At one point, they're living in a van. So this book, it closes off the original 5 X-Men being in the present day. I'm glad that we don't have any more of that garbage. I have no idea what the state of the X-Men looks like after this miniseries. I'm glad we don't have 2 versions of Cyclops, 2 versions of Jean, 2 versions of Angel, etc. Especially since I have never been that interested in the original 5 X-Men. You go back to the Silver Age of the X-Men, the 1960s stuff, just about every Marvel comic coming out at that time was better than the X-Men. I love the Avengers, love Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Daredevil, but really the 1960s X-Men stuff is just garbage. It is all awful. I never cared about those characters, definitely didn't like those stories, so I didn't need multiple versions of these characters hanging out in the Marvel Universe for so long. But sending these guys back to their own time, none of this makes any sense, and it's horribly, horribly handled. I wish that they had been sent back to their own time at the end of Bendis' run. I wish the reason that these guys were here was explained a little better. I did not like this book. So anyway, I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back next week with some more videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.